on 4a, Dalet Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the top, where we have Rabbi Yochanan had said that this halacha that we learn in the Mishnah, that the Kohen Gadol needed to be separated for 7 days prior to Yom Kippur. We learned that from the Miluyim, from the inauguration, where at the Miluyim, the Aaron and Kahan and his sons, the Kahanim, were separated for 7 days in the Mishkan, and on the next day, the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which was the inauguration of the Mishkan, they did the avodah of a single bull and a single ram. So too, in regards to Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would be separated for 7 days, and he would do the avodah, which consists of a single bull and a single ram, and the separation is there in a similar way to the Miluyim, to the inauguration of the Mishkan. And this is learned from the pasuk where it says, and you have done on this day, so shall Tzvi Hashem commanded that you should do lachaper, to atone, and so that tells us for Yom Kippur. So that's where Rabbi Yochanan learns this particular limud. Reish Lakish, however, disagreed. And Reish Lakish said that we learn it from Har Sinai, where the Torah says that for 6 days the mountain was covered by for 6 days a cloud covered him, which in Hebrew could either mean him, Moshe, or it, the mountain. So it says that for 6 days the cloud and the honor of Hashem covered it, and that Hashem called Moshe on the 7th day. And so he says that this means that you need separation. And even though that's 6 days, we also have the teaching of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, which was concerned for the Tumah, that if the Kohen Gadol stays home, he may have relations with his wife. And then if she turns out to be a Nida, then he becomes Tummy Nida for 7 days. And so he would, once he's separating for 6 days, would be separated for the 7th day as well. So that's Reish Lakish's source. Now, at the top of Dalet Amud Aleph, at the end of what we saw yesterday, Rabbi Yochanan challenged Reish Lakish and said, wait, we know that the halacha is, the Brisa taught us, that both the Kohen Gadol in the 7 day separation before Yom Kippur and the Kohen Hediot, who was doing the avodah of the Skan, who was doing the avodah for the Para Aduma, for the red heifer, the 7 day separation that he would have, every single day of those 7 days they would be spritzed with the red heifer water, with the mechatas, in order to become pure from a tumas maize, and then they would be ready for the avodah. Now, this spritzing 7 days doesn't make sense if we're going to learn it from the Miluyim, from the inauguration, where there was spritzing on Aharon and his sons. So then we have that proves Rabbi Yochanan's comparison that we're learning the separation before Yom Kippur from the separation before the inauguration of the Mishkan by the Miluyim. And that's why there was the spritzing of the water, of the red heifer water, every single day, just like there was the spritzing of the blood every single day on an hour. However, according to you, Reish Lakish, what's the spritzing of the Kohen Gadol every single day? After all, by the temple, by the Har Sinai, by the Matan Torah, there was no spritzing on Moshe. And you're saying that Moshe was separated for 7 days or 6 days. Well, there was no spritzing on him for 7 days. The fifth line on Dalet Amud Aleph, Ela de l'detcha de Yalfis mi Sinai. But according to you, that we're learning it from Sinai, Hazab Sinai mihavia. Was there a spritzing on Sinai? Amar le, to which he said to him, Ul taimech minicha. And according to you, it's any better. Reish Lakish responds to Rabbi Yochanan. According to you, that you say we're learning it from in the Miluyim, from the inauguration. B'Miluyim dam. Hacha mayim. By the Miluyim, the spritzing, yes, it's true. There was a spritzing, but that spritzing was blood. They spritzed of the carbon onto Aaron and his children. There wasn't a spritz of mayim, of water. Here we're spritzing water. What comparison is that? The Gemara says, "Hola kasha." That's not a question. The Tanya Rabbi Chia, as Rabbi Chia taught, nichnasu mayim tachas dam. Rabbi Chia taught that the water actually takes the place of the blood, and it's the Mefarshim have a lot to say about this idea. What is this? What's the basis of the water taking place of the blood? I'll just say over from the Tosfos Rush. He says that if we think about it, water is constantly the purifier that we have. We have the water of the mikveh, where you can go in and purify. This is spring water, ma'im chayim. So even though that once it's in a vessel and it's separated, it would not be ma'im chayim in that way for a mikveh. But nevertheless, this is well water, spring water. This is a basic component of tahara, of purification in the Torah. So of course the water would take place of the blood. And also some of us should point out that there was no red heifer water yet at the time of Miluyim, of the inauguration of the Mishkan, and therefore they couldn't have that, and so therefore they used the blood because there was no mechatas yet. Only after they could make the mechatas could they the red heifer water. Only then does that take place of the blood. Why was there no water yet? Sorry. The red heifer water, because the red heifer has to be spritzed noichach pnei oil across of the opening of the oil of the Mishkan or Beis Hamikdash. Now, at the inauguration, you couldn't have a red heifer water yet because you didn't have the Mishkan yet to make the red heifer water. So therefore, they were spritzed with blood. But once the red heifer water was made, that took place of what the water had, what the blood was doing at the time of the inauguration, and so it makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan, as we'll see in the Brisa, that the red heifer water spritz on the Kohen Gadol every single day is in place of what Aaron and his children had, the spritzing of the blood. But Elul Ditcha, as it continues, Rabbi Yochanan says, but according to you, Reish Lakish, that you say we learned it from Har Sinai. Hazah b'Sinai mehava. There was no spritz at all at Har Sinai, even though Tosfos points out that there was a single day, a single spritz, but not a 7-day spritz of any type. That's what it means. Amalei Maila Ba'alma. So he says you're right. That comparison is not based on the comparison that I have to Sinai. And indeed, the spritzing of the red heifer water on the Kohen Gadol, the mechatas on the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur, and the 7-day separation and spritzing on the Kohen before the bringing of a paraduma, a red heifer, that's a maila ba'alma. That's just an additional extra thing we're doing to try and help bring more tahara to the Kohen. As we saw earlier, multiple things that we do to strengthen the tahara of the Kohen, bringing the mechatas, the red heifer, on account of that we purposefully and intentionally make him tameh on the day of the avodah, of the service, and so that he would be a tvul yod. Somebody went to the mikveh that day, and even before the sun has set, he could do it to prove that to show that is the halacha. Since we do that, which is a leniency in Tumah, multiple things we do in order to add tahara, purity, and so this is one of it, that we spritz him with the red heifer water, and the same for the Kohen in preparation of going into the Holy of Holies, not because that's what was done by Har Sinai, but because that's the appropriate thing when you're going to go into the Holy of Holies, that you're purified in every form of purity that we can do, going to the mikveh and spritzing the mechatas. Fine. So we now have the two opinions. Rabbi Yochanan brings the source of the separation 7 days for the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur from the Miluyim, where it says over there, as you have done today, so commands Hashem you shall do to atone for Bnei Israel. And so the so shall you do is the separation, atone for Bnei Israel on Yom Kippur, in preparation of Yom Kippur. And Rish Lakish, he says, no, we learn it from Har Sinai, where it says that the glory of Hashem was upon the mountain for 6 days, with the cloud covering for 6 days. And on the seventh day, Hashem called Moshe. We have a brisa that concurs with the Rabbi Yochanan and a brisa that concurs with the Rish Lakish. We have a brisa clearly like Rabbi Yochanan. It says, it says in the Torah that the introduction to the avodah, the service of Yom Kippur, where there's the bull that the Kohen Gadol brings, and the ram that he brings, and the 2 goats, one sent out and one brought inside. So it says, "B'zos Yaveh Aaron, with this Aaron shall come El HaKodesh to the Holy of Holies." What is elaborated in its area? Mai, what is elaborated in the manner of Miluim? And what does it say over there at the Miluim at the inauguration? Aaron Pirishiva, V'Shemesh Yamechad. Aaron separated for 7 days, but did the service for 1 day. So 7-day preparation of separation, as well as Moshe Masalei Kol Shiva K'dei L'chancha B'Avodah. And every single day of those 7 days, Moshe would teach him and all the service so that he would know what to do. So too in the future generations, Kohen Gadol Perishiva, 7 days the Kohen Gadol is separated, and does the service 1 day on Yom Kippur. Ushnei Talmidei Chachamim and Talmidav Shel Moshe, and 2 scholars, 2 Talmidei Chachamim, students of Moshe, students of the Torah, both the written Torah and the oral Torah that Moshe taught, Lafuket Tzedukim, to exclude Sadducees, Tzedukim, who rejected the traditional oral Torah, and they created their own interpretations. And so the 2 students of Moshe, they too are dedicated to him to give over all the teachings of those 7 days, so that the Kohen Gadol would know and be ready for the service. And from this we can say, they said, Shivas Yom Kippurim, our Mishnah 7 days before Yom Kippur, Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mibesei, we separate the Kohen Gadol from his home, Lalishkas Parhedrin, to the bureau, to the chamber of Parhedrin, and just as the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur is separated for 7 days, Kach Mafrishin Kohen Aserev, as a para, so too the Kohen who's going to burn the Paraduma, the red heifer, we separate him, Lalishka, to a bureau, to a chamber, Shal Pnei HaBira, that's in front of the Bira. We saw 2 interpretations. Is at a particular place or the entire Beis HaMikdash? Tzefanim Mizracha on the northeastern side, and we saw north because it is a Chatas, and east because that's where the Avodah is done on the next mountain on Har HaZeisim, on Mount of Olives. Mazan Olav Kol Shiva, and both of these, the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur, and the Kohen in preparation for the Paraduma, is we spritz on him 7 days from all of the red heifer waters that were there in the Beis HaMikdash. We spritz on them every single day to make sure that they are completely purified in preparation of their avodah. And the Brisa concludes with the question that Rabbi Yochanan addressed. V'im tomer, if you're going to say b'miluyim dam chachamai, that by the miluyim, it's true that by the inauguration there was a spritz, but it was blood, and over here it's water. Amris nechnas mayim tachas dam. It has been taught, it has been said that the water takes place of what was blood in the spritz at the inauguration, at the miluyim. V'omer, and it says kasha osa b'yamazeh tziva shem lasas l'chaper aleichem. As it says, and as you have done on this day, Hashem commanded to atone for them. Lasa is ela masepara, to do. That's the masepara, the red heifer. Lachaper ela maseh Kippurim, and the atonement is the Yom Kippur. to tell you that there's a requirement of the 7 days of separation for the para and for the inauguration, for the Yom Kippur, that we learned from the inauguration. Now, this was all based on the first words. It says, "Bezos yav Aaron," with this shall Aaron come to the holy. And we said, what is this? What is enumerated earlier, which is this idea that it says, on this day, Hashem commanded that you shall do just as you have done. But we need it for something else. To tell you with this, with doing the bull and doing the ram as the chatas and oila. We already said that there's an avodah that's mentioned that is important that he does it, and he must have it out of his own funds. So who tells you that bezos with this shall Aaron come to the holy means what was said elsewhere? Maybe it means what is said here in this manner itself, to tell you that he can only come and do the avodah in the Holy of Holies if he also brings his bull as atonement and his ram as an ascent offering. Amri ila karban l'chudei lemekra bezeh. If it was just for his own personal korban that he needs to bring, and that's what the Torah means when it says if he does this, he can come to the holy, that it should say bazeh, with this, meaning what is mentioned right in front of us, or be'ele, or with these, my bezos. Why does it say in the bezos in the feminine? It mentions bezos, which is a feminine, shmas mina tarti. That change it tells you that besides for what he needs here, he also needs something else. And what is that? Why feminine? Because parisha, Rashi explains that parisha, separation, is a feminine word. And so we know that nouns and verbs in Hebrew can have a masculine and feminine form. And parisha is a feminine form. So bezos, with this feminine, meaning with the separation, is where you're going to have the ability to enter. So that shows that there's a need for separation, besides for what is done in what's mentioned in the pasuk over there. Now, my v'omer. Why do we also need the pasuk if it's already hinted to in the avodah of Yom Kippur itself? Why do I also need the pasuk where it says by the miluim, by the inauguration, and this, and as you have done today, so shall you do to atone? V'omer, my v'omer, v'chitei ma Yom Kippurim kamohu debai prisha kedashkecha miluim, because you may have thought maybe the first Yom Kippur require separation, just like the first. And like the inauguration, the first time Aaron is doing the service, but in future Yom Kippur not. In Ami Kohen Gadol Kama, or perhaps the first Kohen Gadol, Aaron, in all his lifetime, who the Bay Prisha needs separation of Kohen Gadol by Alma, but the future Kohen Gadols don't. Tashama, that's why the Torah says, Ka'asher Asa, as you have done on this day, so shall Hashem commanded to do. This is for the future. Always you have to do as a separation l'chaper. To atone. So this is the brisa that very clearly lays out the teaching that we had in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, this idea that the 7-day separation is learned from the miluim, with the same being for the 7-day separation of before the para aduma, and that this is a generational thing for every generation. However, we also have a brisa that although it doesn't clearly connect Yom Kippur to the teaching of Reish Lakish, but we do find a basis for the teaching of Reish Lakish in this brisa. Now, this brisa also brings a basis for Rabbi Yochanan's teaching, but it does bring a basis for Reish Lakish's teaching. And as we started with, just to review, the Torah says the glory of Hashem in the form of a cloud covering came down and covered him. Vayichasehu. It says the glory of Hashem came on the mountain, and the cloud of Hashem covered him, which as we know, as you just mentioned, verbs and nouns take a masculine or feminine form. So over here, it could either mean Moshe, him, or it could mean him, the mountain. And for 6 days it covered him, and on the seventh day Hashem called Moshe. These 6 days and the seventh day is unclear. When were these 6 days? We know that Bnei Yisrael came to Har Sinai, to the mountain of Sinai, on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, on the first day of Sivan. 6 days later, Moshe had gone up and down the mountain multiple times, come back to them and tell them to separate, 3-day separation, and ultimately the Torah was given. As we'll see here, a machlokas either on the 6th day or the 7th day. What's clear is that on the 7th day of Sivan, Moshe goes back up onto the mountain, and he's there for 40 days and 40 nights, and comes down on the 17th of Tammuz, and sees the golden calf and breaks the luchas. And that's the fast of the 17th of Tammuz, where one of the tragedies of that day is the breaking of the luchas on account of the egel, of the golden calf. So we have the 40 days after, the 6 days before. Now, when does it say over here that, when are these 6 days and the 7th day? If the Torah was given on the 7th day, the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments is on the 7th day of Sivan, so the 6 days can be beforehand. 6 days, the mountain is covered by the cloud, and then the cloud covered him, meaning it, the mountain. And for 6 days, the mountain is covered, but Moshe can't be covered. It can't mean Moshe is covered because Moshe is up and down the mountain the whole time, as the Torah enumerates various times that he goes up, and Hashem, he says, the people are prepared. Hashem says, go down, tell them not to go onto the mountain, tell them to put a fence around, etc. And then ultimately on the 7th day is the Gilu Shechina, Bnei Yisrael see Hashem telling them the 10 Commandments. Or if that happened on the 6th day of Sivan, so then this part cannot have taken the 6 days and the 7th day, Moshe being called, the 6 days of the cloud covering him, whatever him is, and then the 7th day Moshe being called cannot be beforehand, because the Moshe, by the 7th day, the Moshe had already gone up for the 40-day stay. Must be, and on the 6th day the Torah was already given, meaning the Aseres HaDibros were already stated on the 6th day. Therefore, the 6 days of the cloud covering Moshe are talking about after and the beginning of the 40 days. That's what the Gemara now is going to elaborate in this price. Tani Kava Seder Rish Lakish. So we learned like Rish Lakish. Moshe ala ba'anan. Moshe went up in a cloud, v'niskasa ba'anan, and he was covered by the cloud, v'niskadesh ba'anan, and he was sanctified in the cloud, kedei l'kabel Torah l'Yisrael, in order to accept, to receive the Torah for Yisrael b'kedusha, in holiness. Shenemar, as it says, vayishkan kavod Hashem al Har Sinai, the honor or the glory of Hashem rested on Mount Sinai and Har Sinai. Zeho yamaisa achar Aseres HaDibros. This had to have happened after the 10 Commandments, after Aseres HaDibros. Shahayu tchila l'arba'im yom, and therefore these 6 days of the mountain and the 7th day Moshe being called must be the beginning of the 40 days. Divrei Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. That's Rabbi Yossi HaGalili's interpretation. However, Rabbi Akiva says no, vayishkan kavod Hashem merosh chodesh, that the glory of Hashem resting on the mountain is talking about from Rosh Chodesh Sivan, from the first day of Sivan, when Bnei Yisrael are at the foot of the mountain, and the glory of Hashem comes down on the mountain. And now we go to Dalet Amud Beis. And the cloud covered him. What does that mean? Lahar, not Moshe. It covered him, the mountain. Because Moshe went up and down many times, so Moshe was not covered by the cloud the entire 6 days. Vayikra Moshe. And on the 7th day, he calls Moshe. That's the day that the Torah is given. Moshe v'chol Yisrael oimnim. Really, it was Moshe and the entirety of Am Yisrael. However, the Torah wants to give honor to Moshe as the leader and the representative of the receiving of the Torah and bringing Torah to Am Yisrael. So he's mentioned by name. Rabbi Nasa Eimer leba kosav el marek achila shtiya shebemeyav. That no, really. This happened after Har Sinai. But the reason Moshe is mentioned over there, it's not because he was being separated and purified. It was a particular thing for, and therefore we can learn for the rest of Kahanim. No, this particular Moshe, because Moshe for 40 days and 40 nights is not going to eat. So he needed a 6-day purification process, a detox, if you would, where all of physical existence in his body needed to be cleansed. To make him function like angels. Ramasi Bechar says, no, it had a different function. You're right, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that this happened after Har Sinai and after the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments. And this was the beginning of the 40 days. But the reason was not to purify his body, not to separate him so that other Kahanim Gedolim, every time they go into the Holy of Holies, they would have to be separated. No, it's a different function at all. The reason is to give him, to make him in a state of awe, so the Torah is given be'ema, with awe, bereses, with trembling, bezeah, with sweat. Shenema, as it says, Ivdu es Hashem b'yira, serve Hashem with fear, v'gilu, and be joyous, however, b'ra'ada, with a trembling. It's a very human thing to be able to have a tremendous joy. We're receiving the Torah. As Rashi points out, the pasuk says, Pikudei Hashem misharim mesamchei lev, the commandments of Hashem, they are upright and they gladden the heart. And as Tosfos points out, the pasuk says in Divrei Yomim, Oz v'chedva b'mkami. There's strength and there's also gladness, chedva, a inner joy in his place at the Mount Sinai. Never, this idea that you have this tremendous joy of receiving the Torah also comes with an excitement and a trembling and a trepidation. And this idea of a gilu birada, Moshe had to go up to go into a state of ra'ada, of trepidation, while being in a state of simcha, of gladness and happiness. And so that's why he was separated for 6 days. Mai v'gilu barada. What does it mean? There was joy and trepidation. In the name of Rav, the same place that you have the great joy of Torah also has to come with trepidation. The magnitude of what it is, you have the Torah of Hashem, and that you have the opportunity to connect with it and learn with it. That's a tremendous awe-inspiring thought. So what's the basis of this machlokes? Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that this happened after the 10 Commandments. Rabbi Akiva says, no, it happened before the 10 Commandments and the 6 days of separation of Moshe being called. So 6 days actually of the cloud on him, whatever him is, Rabbi Yossi Aglili says on Moshe, and Rabbi Akiva says, no, it means on the mountain. So the basis of this machlokes is Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva b'plukta d'hanin tanoi. They are disagreeing about this similar manner in this machlokes. The Tanaim we learned. B'shisha b'chodesh nitna Torah l'Yisrael. The first opinion says on the 6th day of Sivan is the day that the Torah was given to Yisrael, meaning the 10 Commandments on Har Sinai. Rabbi Yossi says no, it was on the 7th day. Man amar b'shisha. So the one who says it was on the 6th day, b'shisha nitna or b'shiva Allah, because on the 6th day Moshe, the 10 Commandments were given. And on the 7th day, the next day, Moshe went up onto the mountain. As it says, Vayikra Hashem Moshe, as it says, Hashem called Moshe on the 7th day. Man amar b'shiva, and the one who says that it was on the 7th day, b'shiva nitna b'shiva Allah, on that same day that it was given, Moshe went up on the mountain. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Savar. Rabbi Yossi Aglili follows the opinion Katana Kama, like the first opinion. The Amar b'shisha b'chodesh nitna Torah. He says, which day of Sivan was the Torah given? On the 6th day of the month. And therefore, obviously, the 6 days of the glory of Hashem on the mountain and the cloud covering him, and then the 7th day, Moshe being called, cannot be beforehand, because the Torah is already given on the 6th day. So Moshe can't be called on the 7th day. Must be that this is happening after. So 6 days of preparation. The 6th day, Aseres HaDibros were given, the 10 Commandments were given. The 7th day, Moshe goes up onto the mountain and the cloud covers him for 6 days. And on the 7th day, Hashem calls him, let's go, and we'll learn the rest of the Torah. And that's what it means, V'yisha kvod Hashem al Har Sinai, the glory of Hashem rests upon Mount Sinai. V'yachaseu ha'anan sheishes yamim, and the cloud covers him 6 yamim, 6 days. LaMoshe, it covers him, meaning it covers Moshe. Vayikra Moshe v'yom hashavi, and then it covers, Hashem calls Moshe on the 7th day. All this is talking about the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th days of Sivan, and on the 13th day of Sivan, Moshe is called the Kabuli Shar Torah to receive the rest of the Torah. Now, why does it have to be that way? Because if the 6 days of the glory of Hashem on the mountain and the cloud covering him is from Rosh Chodesh, and it's like you, Rabbi Akiva says, that it covered him, the cloud covered him, meaning the mountain, and it called Moshe on the 7th day, to receive the 10 commandments, the 7th day, Meshisha was already done the day beforehand. And the cloud would have lifted already on the 6th day. So therefore, he says, since he follows the first opinion, that the giving of the 10 commandments was on the 6th day of Sivan, this 6 days of the glory of Hashem and the cloud covering him, and the 7th day Moshe being called cannot happen beforehand, because there are no 7 days before, and there's only 6 days. Therefore, this must have happened after. On the 6th day of Sivan, Moshe is the 10 commandments are given. On the 7th day, Moshe goes up on the mountain. The cloud covers him for 6 days, and on the 7th day, he's called for the rest of the Torah. However, Rabbi Akiva disagrees, and he says, Rabbi Akiva Savalak Rabbi Yossi. He follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, which says that the Torah was given on the 7th day, meaning the 10 commandments, Aseres HaDibros, took place on the 7th day of Sivan. The Amar B'Shiva B'Chodesh Nitno Torah, the Yisrael. The 7th day, the Torah was given to Yisrael. As the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, that Moshe Hosef Yom Echad Yosef of Midaita, that Moshe added another day to the preparation on his own account. Now, Bishlam Rabbi Akiva Haina the Mishkachas La B'Shiva V'Asa B'Tammuz. So according to Rabbi Akiva, makes sense. We have the 7 days of preparation beforehand with the glory of the on the mountain and the cloud on the mountain for 6 days. The 7th day Moshe is called and they receive the Torah. Moshe goes up, and for 40 days he's in the mountain. So if you go from the 7th of Sivan, you're going to have 30 days and 10 days, 40 days. That's going to take you to the 17th of Tammuz. That's the 40 days later that the tablets were broken. Because you have 24 days of Sivan and Shitza de Tammuz and the 16 days of Tammuz. So then you have 40 days. So the 17th of Tammuz is 40 days later when you break when Moshe would break the tablets. The Havabahar, the 40 days that he's in the mountain. He came down on the 17th, and he came and he broke the tablets. However, according to you, Rabbi Yossi Galili, that you say that the 6th day of Sivan, the Torah was given. Moshe goes up for 7 days, 6 days covered by the cloud. The 7th day he's called, and he's up for 40 days. Well, then actually it's 47 days later that the tablets are broken. So you have 6 days of separation plus the 40 days on the mountain. So then the breaking of the luchas doesn't happen until the 23rd. Rabbi Yossi says you're making a mistake. The 7 days of separation, 6 days of separation, and the 7th day Moshe being called is a part of the 40 days. Arbaim dahar bahadi shisha the. The 40 days that Moshe is on the mountain includes the 6 days of separation. Amar. So now we're going to analyze the statements. We have the teacher had said Vayikra Moshe that Moshe was called. Moshe v'chal Yisrael oimnin. Even though that Rabbi Akiva said that Moshe and everybody this is calling Moshe at the giving of the Torah. This is not like Rabbi Yossi Galili's opinion, where the Torah Moshe is being called up onto the mountain for the 40 days, but rather this is Moshe being called for the 10 commandments, but Hashem is speaking to the rest of the nation as well. This is the idea that Moshe was called, even though that everybody is ready for this teaching. Messiah Rabbi Elazar, Damar Rabbi Elazar says, by Yikra Moshe, Moshe was called, Moshe v'chal Yisrael leimnim, everybody, all of Yisrael standing together with Moshe, and the Torah is coming to give honor to Moshe as their teacher, as the conduit, the one that's bringing the teaching to Bnei Yisrael. So Moshe is honored, even at the 10 Commandments, where we're hearing it directly from Hashem. Moshe is honored by being called. So we ask a question, Kollel love. It says that the voice came to him. Shema mina Moshe shama v'chol Yisrael lo shamu. That the Brisa says that the voice that came forth from on top of the ark that called to Moshe, Moshe heard it and Bnei Yisrael did not hear it. L'kasha b'sinai ba'omay. The Gemara says, yeah, that's true. At the temple, at the Mishkan and Mikdash, where the voice of Hashem called from on top of the ark, that voice went directly to Moshe. Nobody else could hear it. Whereas by Sinai, everybody else can hear it as well. Or perhaps it depends. If the Torah uses the word Vayikra, it was called, so that's a calling to Moshe directly. If the Torah says daber, speak, so that's sorry. If it was a call, everybody could hear it. If it was speaking, it was speaking directly to Moshe. Rabbi Zrika Rami Krayad Kamei de Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Zrika asked a contradiction in verses in front of Rabbi Elazar. V'amri lo Rabbi Zrika Rabbi Elazar Rabbi, or that Rabbi Zrika said that Rabbi Elazar himself asked this contradiction. It says that Moshe could not enter the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the temple, because the cloud had rested upon it, filled the Mishkan, and he could not enter. The cloud was so dense. And yet it says that Moshe walked in the midst of the cloud. Which one was it? Was it so dense that Moshe could not enter? Or was it that Moshe walked in the midst of the cloud? So the Gemara. So this first answer is Malamed Shetosa Kadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe v'Haviyu B'Yam. That Moshe could not enter. The cloud was so dense. The glory of Hashem being so immense, Moshe could not enter, and that Hashem, if we could say so, brought Moshe in himself. He pulled Moshe in to the cloud. Whereas the Academy of Rabbi Shmuel, they answered it this way. Nemar kan betoch. It said that Moshe came in the midst of the cloud. But it also says a similar word that Bnei Yisrael came at the splitting of the sea. Bnei Yisrael came in the midst of the sea. Just as over there, the sea parted to make a path in its midst. And the walls, that the water was for them a wall. Afkan Shvil. So to here, Moshe could not enter because of the cloud, the glory of Hashem there. And Hashem split the cloud, making a way for Moshe to enter, to show that Moshe, that you cannot penetrate, you cannot see and fathom, but Hashem can make a place, a path for someone to learn that which is theirs to learn. Vayikra el Moshe ve'edaber. It says Hashem called Moshe and spoke these words, Lamor, saying them. So Lama hiktim kriya l'dibur. Why did it say Hashem called him and said it and spoke to him? Just say Hashem spoke to Moshe. Limda Torah derech eretz. The Torah teaches a derech eretz, a manners. Don't start speaking to someone. Call them and then speak to them. It is appropriate to acknowledge them and to call out to them and then to begin speaking. So, as Rabbi Chanina taught, and this is the support, that a person should not speak to another person unless you first call them and acknowledge them, and then speak to them. Lemor, to say, Amar Rabbi Musia bar Berei de Ramasya, Mishmei de Rabbi Musa or Menasya. It was said in the name of Rabbi Musia, Rabbah, the great Ramusia. How do you know that if somebody tells you information, they didn't tell you, oh, by the way, don't tell anyone else. If you're told something and the expectation is that it's to you and you alone, that you have no right to repeat it. Until he says to you, do not repeat it. Go ahead and tell others. Shenema, for it says, Hashem spoke to him from the temple, from the tent of meeting, from the temple. Lemor, to say it. Lemor, to say it. Without that, he would have no right to repeat it. Rashi actually says that lemor is a compound word of lo amar. Do not say it until the time that you're allowed to say it. It's very difficult because actually lemor means do say it. And also the idea then would be that only if the person tells you not to repeat it, then you have no right to repeat it. So Rashi obviously does not mean that the word lemor means do not say it, or rather within the word lemor, to say, is hinted lo amar, that you have to know that you can't just speak something that someone has told you. Mechlal. Okay, so this is the end of the teaching of Moshe being the conduit to teach Torah to Bnei Yisrael. Hashem telling Moshe the Torah and bringing it to us, and the machlokas of whether the Aseres HaDibros, were the revelation at Sinai, was on the 6th day or on the 7th day, and the 6 days of the cloud covering him, does that mean covering the mountain for the 6 days prior to the giving of the Torah, or it means the 6 days after, because it was the giving of the Torah was on the 6th day, and Moshe is being called on the 7th day of that cloud, and then the cloud cover means covering Moshe. And that, if that's the case, so we have proof according to that teaching. We now have proof to Rabbi Yochanan, to Rish Lakish, that we have a 7 day or 6 day separation of Moshe, the cloud covering him, as a form of purifying him to be able to be on the mountain for the rest of the time to receive the Torah. So too the Kohen Gadol would have a 7 day separation, even though that Gemara said it was 6 over there. We have a 7th day as well in case he becomes Tameh. A 7 day separation before Yom Kippur, and it's being learned from the separation of Moshe. Either way, neither of them disagreed to the concept that whatever we found by the Miluim, by the inauguration, whatever was done was important to happen, and if you didn't do it, it would invalidate it. Because Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, "Hey, by the Miluim, the 7 day separation was necessary because Miluim Ma'akiv, and if you didn't do it, it would be invalid. And over here, we know that the halacha is that it's not invalid because the replacement Kohen does not have to be separated for 7 days." And so we see that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish both accept this idea that whatever was done at the Miluim, at the inauguration, had to be done, and if it wasn't done, it would invalidate. We're going to leave it at that, and tomorrow we'll come back to this, the Gemara challenging this, that we said that whatever was done at the Miluim, at the inauguration of the Mishkan, had to be done, otherwise it was invalidated, if that's true for all generations as well. Yashikach, wishing you a great day.
Yeshua.